The third component is problem solving. And when we say problem solving, probably a easier way to refer to it would be word problems. And probably an easier way to think of word problems is just any math problem, but presented in the written word or explained through a problem where it has to be read through words. This is a silly explanation, but essentially that's what it comes down to. What makes it more, I guess, interesting or more nuanced is that there really isn't just one type of word problem. I get, and that does make it more difficult for some people. Well, they think, well, I see a math problem. It's been written in words, therefore it must be a word problem. Yes, that's true in one sense, but there's more to it than that. So probably a good way to think of it is in order to help students again become good math students, there's three types of word problems that can be presented to them. So the very first one is something that's called structure based. And this is probably the simplest one. It's one that any of us could just make up on the spot. But let's say there's a computational skill that they've been practicing at that moment. Let's just say it's subtraction. And then you give them a problem that is clearly just a subtraction problem like they've just been doing, but it's written as a word problem where, hey, Johnny starts off with 25 apples, but then Johnny trips and falls, and 18 of the apples fall down a hill forever, never to be caught again. How many apples does Johnny have left? Now, although we feel bad for Johnny, it's just a straightforward computational problem. The next one is a multi step problem where it's similar to word problem type one, but now there's multiple steps involved. And along each of those steps, maybe there's a different operation that needs to be used. Maybe in step one of the problem, you have to do addition, but then by step two, you have to do percentages. And for example, it could be one of those things where what is the total cost of all the items that are picked up at the store? And then what's going to be the cost per person if it's going to be split between 8 people? So that would be a multi step word problem. That's type 2. Now, type 3 word problem is what we call something that's more complex or non-routine. And these, there might not be an operation that's used at all, and it's more analytical spatial thinking. An example I could give of that is, let's say you have a cake and you have to put candles on the cake that go on top of the cake, but around the perimeter of the cake, so to speak. And they must be an inch away from the edge of the cake, but the candles must also be an inch apart from each other. But you can't have two candles at the corners of the cake, and the cake is 4 inches wide by 6 inches long. How many candles can fit onto the cake? And for these, you usually have to choose a strategy to use to solve these. And with that, it takes a lot more thinking and seeing if your answer makes sense. But this is what we call, again, non-routine or more complex word problems. Now, there is kind of a fourth one. I personally wouldn't call it a type of word problem, but some consider it to be. Type 4 would just be taking real life problems and then taking the math you know and solving it. But again, usually, in my opinion, if you look at real life problems, it falls somewhere in the spectrum of a type 1, 2, or 3 word problem. And so, I don't know. I don't really count that, but they are still legitimate and they are helpful for having students learn how to problem solve.